Greetings everyone, and welcome to this brand new episode of the CN Sanmore Subdivision. This is now mid-November. This is episode number 11, although it could very well be episode number 10.5, because this is actually a follow-up on my episode number 10, when I mentioned that I would be talking more in detail about this project right here, which is the Chattaway River bridge. Now, as you've probably guessed by now, this bridge is another scratch building project that I did. It's a project that I did last winter, actually. And brief history on it. It's not really based. It doesn't really follow a specific prototype. It is loosely based on an existing bridge that CN has, but I did modify it quite a bit because I needed to fit the space that I have and the requirements, because I did not have a need for a double track bridge, which the original bridge is, and needed to fit for the space that I had, which is a little bit over 8 feet. So this is why it's sort of my own design, and I'll take you through the process of how I built this bridge. In a nutshell, this bridge is made out of styrene, mostly. The sides are styrene. The rivet details are laser board, which was of course lasered to remove some of the material so that the rivet would pop out. The deck is wood ties, just like all the wood ties that I have on my layout, and so is the little walkway on the sides here. There's a couple of 3D printed parts on there. I'll focus more on the details with the camera a little bit later, and some wood for the pillars and some paper. Believe it or not, this is paper, but it looks incredible. What I'll do is I took some photos of when I built the bridge, so I'll stop right here. I'll just do a little bit of a close-up so you can see the bridge as it is, all done, and then I'll edit the photos in. Now, before moving on to the actual steps, the photos, I'm going to share a secret with you. And the secret is, what's the secret to my projects, to my, I wouldn't call it success, but to a successful project, is having the right tools. And as you will see in the photos, a big part of my bridge was cut out of styrene. And styrene, as most of you know, I have a laser engraver. I do a lot of stuff on my laser engraver. But unfortunately, styrene is not a material that you can easily cut on the laser engraver. You can, so I know some people do. But the thicker styrene, the problem that I have with it is that it takes several cuts. And even if you go with several cuts at low power, there's still a chance that your styrene is going to fuse back together because of the heat of the laser. And it doesn't do a nice square perfect cut. It does sort of the laser sort of digs a trench into the styrene if you look at it with a microscope. Now, what I did for my bridge is I used this machine right here, which is a CNC router. Now, this router is it's computer controlled. You kind of like the laser engraving. You do your design on the software. It has its own software. This machine, I forgot to mention, this machine is a machine that I purchased from Carbide 3D, which they were gracious enough to supply me a nice t-shirt for me to do my video today. So thank you very much, Carbide 3D. It's the Shapeoko 4. It's one of their smallest machines. Usually CNC machines are big machines, and they're designed to be set up in a shop. And when I say a shop, I mean a shop, like my woodworking shop that I have in the back of the house here. Now, this was not my my best, shiniest moment, but I installed my machine in my studio, in the house. So you can just imagine this spindle right here. It's a router, so it's loud, and I mean really loud. So I can't really use it when somebody else is in the house. I have to use it when I'm alone in the house. And of course, being a router, there's a lot of chips. It's the way it works is it's with little drill bits that spin really fast. So it creates a lot of little chips. Not really dust, but chips. And of course, you'll get chips all over the place. I did set up with a small vacuum. That helps a bit. There's a little sweeper here, and it's right on top of the bit, so that swallows up a bit of the chips. But especially with styrene, which is very static, I found bits of styrene on the ceiling. It'll go everywhere and it'll stay there. It'll stick like crazy. Now, the reason why I put this in the shop is because in the studio instead of in the shop, for two reasons. First of all, because this is computer driven. The computer is always connected to the machine, and I do the design while it's connected, although I don't have to, but I do it that way. I cannot have the computer in my woodworking shop because my woodworking shop is dusty, incredibly dusty. So that's why I have the this setup here in the studio. Now, the other reason is I'm not planning on cutting a lot of dirty stuff like wood. I don't do any wood on this. I'm not going to do a lot of styrene. If I have to, I will, but I'm trying to avoid it. I purchased this machine to cut brass because there's nothing else here that I have that can cut through thick brass. With the thinner brass, I can etch it like I do for my signals and all my other projects. That works well with the very thin brass. But the projects that I want to build on this machine are mostly either cars, maintenance of way equipment, maybe locomotives. One of these days, if I live long enough and I can find, you know, the resources, the know-how and everything, that's all in the works. And this machine is designed to cut brass, and I tried several different thicknesses. I can show, I don't know if I can get close enough to the camera here. I have 5 mil. Where's the camera? There it is. I have 5 mil, which is, hold on, I'll try to find something here to focus on. Does that work? A little bit. Now, 5 mil is what I use for my signals. This I can etch, but I can also cut on the CNC. I've also tried .025, which is a little bit more, a little bit thicker. And this is, you know, this doesn't bend very easily, so this would probably be a good medium for what I'm planning to do. I did try somewhere in between with the 016, and it cuts real well, but I think it might be a little bit too thin. So all of that just to tell you that for the bridge, since I wanted to go with styrene, I decided to try my machine here and cut all the parts on the machine with a special bit for it, a plastic bit downward cut, and it worked flawlessly. And you'll see in the photos, I cut some strips. And I mean strips. They're I don't know if they're maybe, not even 1/8 of an inch wide. It's 40,000 styrene, and it did some nice cuts. So this machine is a big part of why this bridge turned out so well. Of course, 3D printing. You'll see a few of the parts that I did with the 3D printer. Another machine that I could not live without anymore, and some laser cut parts. So that's my secret. If you want to build nice things, you gotta have good tools. And this is one tool that it's not for everybody, but it's something that I highly recommend to anyone who wants to work. If you plan to work a lot with styrene, different thicknesses of styrene, you want nice clean cuts, no burns, no burrs, no nothing. It's just nice clean cuts. This is the machine for you. If you want some information on this machine, you can go to Carbide 3D. I think their website is www.carbide3d.com. I'm not sure, I can't guarantee that. But if you do a search for Carbide 3D, you will find this machine, the Shapeoko 4. And it's the smallest one there. You'll see there are different sizes because those are designed for sign makers, for cabinet makers, for hobbyists of different hobbies. As some of you know, I recently started, about a year ago, I started in RC trucks. And a lot of people who do work heavily into RC, who make their own frames, they make their own parts, they use a CNC machine. This is a very good machine. I did start with something smaller, something that's very popular. I'm not going to give out any names or brands because I don't want to put anyone down, but it was a smaller machine, very popular, and it was too small. It was the size was okay. I mean, it was just a bit smaller than this. All the parts, the carriage, the bearings, everything was too small. That machine was vibrating under the stress of cutting through styrene. Didn't even try brass, just styrene. And the cuts were all shaky. And you know, if you're going to invest in a solid machine. This is a solid machine. It's way down there price wise in the CNC world, because like I said, CNC machines are for commercial uses, and they're big machines, they're expensive machines. This comes as a kit, easy to assemble, and it's a very good machine for the cost. So that's all I wanted to say. On to the photos.
Okay, I am now sitting comfortably at my desk with a nice hot chocolate, and I will be commenting on the photos as they roll along here. Now, what you're seeing right now is the before photo. This is the area where the bridge was going to be. Now the first thing that I did was to paint the clouds on the backdrop, my usual method with the spray paint. And then I proceeded to doing the riverbed by gluing some styrofoam in place. I then pre-printed I should say, and pre-cut all the designs for the backdrop, which I glued into place. And usually using my method that I described in my previous video, I curled the riverbed, or the photo of the river, onto the riverbed, from the wall to the riverbed. So looking at this photo, it's kind of hard to tell which part is on the bed and which part is on the wall. Now this is what the entire backdrop looks like prior to installing the bridge. I think this is quite satisfactory. It looks pretty good. Now once I had that done, I could proceed to install the riverbank with this styrofoam, and I was then ready to proceed to start building the bridge. So you ask, what's all that material on your table? Well, actually that's the bridge. That's the before photo of the bridge. That's all the material that was included in the construction. There's the styrene for the sides, there's the cardboard for the tie plates, the wood for the actual ties, a little bit more wood for the railings, there's the resin for the 3D printed parts, there's some glue, paint and stain. All the materials that went into the bridge. Now the first thing I did after I designed the parts was to, like I said, cut them on the CNC machine. You can see the machine here cutting some strips, and if I do a close-up on these parts, look at how clean this machine can cut styrene. It's amazing. I'm using a very small bit and it's working really well. Now here you have all the parts, including the lasered strips of rivets. Now once I had all these parts, it was just a matter of starting the assembly. I started with the sides, put the sides together, put the rivets on there, and then I glued the sides to the center sills. Now you can see an 8-foot bridge on my table. It takes a lot of space in my studio. I then designed and 3D printed all the small details that I wanted to add, and that was pretty much it for the sides of the bridge. The next step was to start working on the deck. And here you can see all the parts that I used for the deck. The wood that you saw previously was cut into wood ties, and I also lasered the cardboard to make the tie plates. And then I proceeded to gluing the ties onto the center sill, keeping the correct spacing using my template. I then took everything into the shop and I stained the ties the correct color. Now the next logical step was to get that bridge painted. So here you can see the sides being primed, and then I mixed some green paint and painted all the parts. And then a friend of mine sent me a photo of an old Canadian National Bridge which had a nice strip to the sides. So I redesigned that on the computer, printed that on the Alps, made a decal for it, and I applied it to the side of the bridge. And then it was time to get that bridge weathered. And I went a little crazy with the weathering because I wanted that bridge to look like it's been there for a long while. So the steps are very simple here. I just faded the sides, the green paint, using some very diluted white paint, and then I applied some oils, of different colors of rust and brown, and used some thinner to make the rust spot kind of drip. Now after letting the stain on the deck ties dry for about a week, I prepared some more wood in the shop which I pre-painted. That wood was going to be used for the walkways along the rails on the bridge. So those were laser cut, and then I did a test fit to see if the width was okay, and then I was ready to start working on that deck. So first thing I did on the deck was to install the tie plates one by one, and then I spiked the rails on there, and then I installed the bracing for the guardrails for the walkway. Here you can see the rails, the inner rail, everything is installed, and you get a better shot here with the walkway and the railing. Here I had one side that was all done, and this was getting pretty close to completion here. Now you have the entire deck ready to be installed on top of the bridge sides. After I put the two parts together, I brought the entire bridge assembly down onto the layout, and it was time to do a test fit. And with this fitting pretty much the way I wanted, it was now time to build the very last step, which is the bridge supports and the abutments, which as you can see here I made out of wood and some sign foam and some paper that I purchased on eBay. I just covered the pillars with the paper, and then using my sign foam material, I did the concrete part, which were then painted and weathered a little bit. And with a few graffitis, it looked quite convincing. Now for the last step, the bridge abutments, I used again sign foam, which is the material that I used for all my bridge abutments so far on the layout. And sign foam was cut on the table saw and glued together and set to fit pretty much the way the prototype looked. That's the only part that was based on the prototype. how I painted these parts and added some graffiti and a little bit of weathering, and that was it. The bridge was pretty much done and looking pretty good. And the rest, as they say, is history. Well, like you saw in the previous video, I'm now at the step where I'm adding the scenery base and getting ready to do the scenery. Well, that pretty much covers the construction of this bridge. I hope you enjoyed the video. I didn't want to go too deep in detail, but then again, I wanted you guys to see exactly what I've done here. If you have any questions on the products or techniques or the tools that I used, don't hesitate to reach out. My email is listed on the screen right now, northshorescale@gmail.com. I always welcome your comments and your questions. Thanks for watching. See you next time.